Hi, Michael.
Hi, Natalie.
I'm so excited to talk to you today because we're talking about the very sexy topic of direct mail marketing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You and I chatted briefly, I think it was last week, and I get really excited about direct mail marketing, and clearly you do too. Let's talk a little bit about why you get so excited about direct mail marketing.
Sure. So just to introduce everybody, I'm Michael Refky. I have been a marketer in the financial services industry for 20 plus years at this point. The past 15 years of my career has been very deeply involved with direct marketing. And direct mail has been a big component of that. That's all, just kind of been a standard channel that I have worked in over that period of time, and it's a channel that I've become very passionate about, right? Because it has its own benefits and its own particular challenges, and even though it is a very old channel, it is still a lucrative channel. So it's something that brands need to absolutely think about.
I'm in very similar space, as in not necessarily financial services, but more to the fact that I have seen direct mail do incredible things for driving the growth of an organization, and an organization that is very focused on digital transformation and innovation. So there doesn't necessarily need to be this dichotomy of having to move innovation forward and leaving any legacy channels behind. Direct mail has such a breadth of capabilities to actually drive business that I'm excited that we get to talk about it a little bit.
Me too. And it's interesting kind of you talked about sort of the digital environment. And I know, I've been working in direct mail as, digital has become more and more the forefront of kind of the marketing mix across industries. And there was actually a period of time when I had colleagues who encouraged me not to talk about direct mail. Right. I mean, they were like, don't talk about how much you do direct mail because, it makes you seem outdated. Right. I remember I had a conversation with the CEO of a financial services company at one point. I won't name the company, but I was talking about marketing and I was talking about the fact that we did a lot of direct mail, and his response to me was, "Well, we don't do that, right? Like we're a digital first company, we don't do that." And I was kind of like, "Oh." And then fast forward 5 years, I was doing some competitor research, and guess who was doing direct mail at that point, right? Like, even companies that have been very much on the vanguard of digital are considering direct mail as a channel now.
Agreed. And direct mail works for different audiences differently. So you can't just
Yes.
say, I'm going to start a business and do direct mail, because you really, really need to know, focusing on the data for targeting in direct mail can be incredibly specific or very, very broad in general. And it is very easy to lose a lot of money doing direct mail if you're not doing it intelligently.
Yes, it is.
I have had somebody that I've spoken with, who also I won't regard, who dumped their entire direct mail budget into Valpak inserts.
I had the head of a business who wanted me to do Valpak, and I was like, please, let's not do Valpak. So I am totally with you.
And I'm sure Valpak has its place in an overarching marketing plan. It can't be the only thing you're doing. Just
Right.
because you're getting reach, it is not the same as reaching the right audience at the right time with the right message. Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about direct mail in and of itself is not the silver bullet, right? It's not going to solve all of your business problems,
Right.
but it is for the right audience and the right business executed well. It is an integral part of an integrated campaign. How does it fit?
Well, so the interesting thing, kind of getting back to kind of the digital side of things, right? I mean, as we all know as marketers, we're living in an attention economy at this point, right? I mean, and most of that attention has been focused in digital, these things we hold in our hands all day long and are flipping through. That's where so much of marketing is concentrated these days. But the thing is, the digital space is becoming so oversaturated, right? I mean, we're getting hit with emails, we're getting hit with social, we're getting hit with SMS, pre-roll, mid-roll video. Like literally every time we look at our phones, we're getting hit with something. So it's oversaturated, and it's also very ephemeral, right? I mean, I was talking to someone the other day who was talking about the fact that the average attention span for social media ads at this point has gone down to 3 seconds. I remember when it was 10 seconds, and as a marketer, we were like, "Oh my God, what the hell are we going to do in 10 seconds?" Now it's 3 seconds. So that window keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Hmm.
So, in this kind of a world, the great thing about direct mail is it's this physical, tangible medium that comes right to your house, and it really offers more of a sensory experience to the the consumer, the prospect who receives it. So, when you're talking about integrating it into your marketing campaigns, it's a partner for digital, right? Like that's where we're at right now. We're not in a position anymore where it can just be kind of a standalone channel and that's what you do. I'm old enough to remember when that was the case. Like we just did direct mail. Now in this digital environment, it really needs to flow together with your digital campaigns.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is you need to figure out a way to work the digital campaigns in tandem with direct mail so that you're really constructing this experience that's like omni-channel customer touchpoints, right? So what are some examples of that? For example, you're using QR codes in your direct mail or pearls, personalized URLs, so that you're actually sending somebody to an online experience where then you can potentially use pixels and track what they do. And then based on that behavior, you can retarget them in another medium. Trigger-based campaigns where you're showing, ads to people who interact with your mail in some way. So it's not so much that when you do direct mail, you're getting away from digital. It's that you're figuring out a way to work them together.
Absolutely. So I do have questions about QR codes and pearls in direct mail because I have very varied experiences and very varied opinions that I've heard about it. So we'll come back to that in a moment.
Okay.
In terms of the experience standpoint, one of the most beautiful elements of direct mail that I experience every season on a regular basis is when Amazon sends a catalog to my house. Amazon, who's always been digital first, sends me a physical catalog. And what does my kid do? Flips through that catalog and tells me what exactly she wants to have show up under their Christmas tree for her. And that concept of how you can create a different shopping experience that involves a larger group of people than just you sitting on your phone and kind of swiping through the app is significant, right? We
Yes.
have Anderson Windows does a really good direct mail campaign that very significantly mimics handwritten notes from their local vendors that still stop me in my tracks. I know what it is. I do this for a living, but I still see those and I pause because it looks
Mhm.
like somebody slipped a note into my mailbox. And these are just of a couple of examples where the experience that you want your customer to have in their real life, in their home, can only really be done with a physical, tangible element that is delivered.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I am young enough to remember the Sears catalogs, right,
Yes.
back in the 70s and 80s. And that wasn't just something we received in the mail. It was something we look forward to every year, right?
Hmm.
Like, so you're not just sending something to somebody that they can potentially peruse and buy a product. Like it's really kind of engaging the imagination in a way that other types of advertising don't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so it can be very, very powerful. I mean, my experience is mainly in, like I said, it's in financial services, which, I mean, direct mail operates a little bit differently there than it does for retail, right? I mean, we're the reason why you see so many pieces of mail for, loan products, banking products, healthcare, insurance, things like that, is because these are high consideration industries where you have to give a lot of thought to what it is you're buying, right?
Hmm.
So it's not so much that experience of like getting a catalog in the mail and kind of flipping through it and having that sort of magical experience that even appeals to children. It's more of an experience of okay, what is, when I look at this thing, how is this making my life, right? Like, what is the real customer benefit here? And is it something that I haven't even thought of before, right? Like, is there a way to, for example, improve my financial health by leveraging a particular financial services product, right? So it's my experience is a little bit different than what you're talking about.
But you're absolutely right. And what you're talking about translates across any industry, really. Because if you think about digital experiences, most of the time they're driven by the consumer, as they should be, because the consumer should be giving you some intent of what they're looking for. But when I shop, whether it's for a financial product or for a physical product, I go and I search for the specific thing that's in my mind, which means that I already need to have significant enough information and consideration for a specific product.
Right.
However, you're able to incite interest. You're able to give me another idea for something that hopefully you have done enough research to know that I will probably like,
Right.
but something that I wouldn't have considered otherwise. And all of a sudden, the breadth of the relationship that I have with this brand is bigger because I am now considering more than just this one thing that I had top of mind for myself.
Absolutely, and you're right. That does apply even in financial services. For example, people, consumers in the marketplace aren't necessarily thinking, for example, about doing a debt consolidation, right? I
Yes.
mean, that's not the kind of thing that you just kind of dream about doing, right?
Not a high
um,
interest category. I agree.
yeah, exactly. So kind of the good thing about a medium like direct mail is, and this is across the entire financial services industry, this is a very common practice, right? Like, I mean, you'll kind of use debt consolidation as a way in for the customer, right? Like you, the customer, maybe have not considered how, you could, leverage the rate environment to potentially improve your standing in terms of your debts, put more money in your pocket month over month, save on interest. That's not even something that most people are thinking about on a day-to-day basis. So, a medium like direct mail that's coming to your home, it can really put that in your mind.
I also, in terms of the overarching experience, I wanted to hear your opinion. There's plenty of services out there that allow you to retarget your site visitors via direct mail. And I know different industries have different regulations, and you and I are going to have a separate conversation about functioning as a marketer in a highly regulated industry. But have you had any experience with those kinds of services that do direct mail retargeting? And how has that worked if you have?
Direct mail retargeting. And are you talking mainly about, like, retargeting of my company's customers, or retargeting, for example, a trigger-based campaign that maybe is looking at somebody's credit activity on their credit bureau report and identifying when they've spoken to another loan company, and then we hit them with another direct mail piece.
Uh, yes, and because I do want to get into this a little bit more, but I specifically with consumer based retail products, one of the things that I see a lot is if I will visit a website within 2 days, I will get a postcard
Mm,
about the products, not necessarily the products that I saw, but for the brand that I have visited,
right.
and I recognize that this was through tracing my IP into some sort of giant data lake of
Sure.
records, figuring out where I live and sending me that postcard. And for me, again, as a consumer and somebody who likes targeted advertising, oh great, that's right, I was looking at that, and thank you for the reminder, is my sentiment. But I'm wondering if you've ever actually had experience using something like that.
I mean, I think that's a powerful tactic. I think the challenge with doing it in direct mail, as with anything direct mail related, is cost,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so the targeted campaigns that I have worked on have been sort of targeting website visitors with an email
Yeah.
afterwards, right? So I mean, that is an effective strategy because you're creating multiple touch points and you're kind of reeling somebody back
Mhm.
in after they've already, kind of sampled your wares, and they know what you're about, and you're kind of, putting yourself top of mind for that. But more in the digital, kind of in the email digital space, not so much sending them a paper product.
Okay, so then let's talk about the cost because you bring up another excellent point. Direct mail is not cheap, right? You
Right.
might find a very cheap way to print something if it's maybe a very, very simple design and a very, very simple message, but you still have to send it and fulfill it, which
Correct.
adds significant cost to every single piece sent. How do you go about justifying that cost?
Well, I mean, it's a process, right? And it's something that takes time and takes experimentation, because not every kind of direct mail piece is going to work for every industry, right? Like
Yep.
you kind of mentioned postcards earlier. In financial services, postcards not so much,
No.
right? Like, I mean, I will say that I have worked on campaigns where we sent them. Typically, for what I have found working in kind of that high consideration type of industry is what works best is really just kind of a plain white number 10 envelope with a letter in it that kind of tells the story about the customer benefit, and not so much sort of these I guess kind of like self mailer type mailings, right? What I have seen, as a marketer, is those self mailers and postcards, things like that, tend to have like a very, very, very low response rate.
Yes, I completely agree. And those postcards that I tend to see are the ones for higher products that don't necessarily have a long buying journey. So, where you can have a more kind of reflex purchase
Right.
to something that you've been really, really wanting for a while. So, I would agree with you there.
Right.
The other element with the plain white envelope is it doesn't actually seem like advertising. So that's a very big benefit for people to actually open it up and see what it says.
Correct.
I have also seen that it's a lot less exciting as a creative marketer to put something that is a letter in a plain white envelope, but it goes a long way in terms of actually getting somebody's eyes on it.
Correct. And like what I have seen as a marketer is plain white envelope. Yeah, it's boring. I agree. I mean, and I've worked with so many of them over the years. I'm just kind of like, oh, right. Like it's not the kind of thing you would ever put in a portfolio, right?
Yes.
But you can be a little bit more graphics intensive and a little bit more fun with the graphics inside, right? I mean, that's in financial services, I feel like that's where we kind of concentrate more of our attention.
Hmm.
Getting back to kind of what you were saying before about like kind of cost efficiencies, right? I mean, I think there are a variety of ways that you can do that even in financial services with direct mail, right? Like I've explored things like, are we doing simplex versus duplex printing? And what I mean by that is, when if you're printing like a pre-printed shell and then you're doing some kind of variable data on top of it, are you doing it on both sides of the page, or are you doing it on one side of the page, right?
Hmm.
If you are working for a larger organization that sends, mail for various products, are there ways for you to gang run your mail together to realize cost efficiencies? How many inks are you using? There are a variety of ways you can get cost efficiencies. I wish I could say that one of those was with self mailers, but I can't.
So, okay, going back to self mailers and QR codes and personal
Yeah.
URL. This has been my experience. I'm wondering if it's been similar to yours. QR codes and personal URLs on self mailers for me have not worked because the self mailers don't feel personal. And therefore, nobody cares to actually go through the process of typing in that URL or scanning that QR code. And if
Mhm.
they are actually interested in what you're saying, they will just go to the website directly because everybody knows how to do that. However, when you deliver it in a plain white envelope as a personal letter, or at least something that feels like a personal letter, in that case, there seems to be an inherent benefit of going to the specific URL that's been provided in the letter and seeing what that offers for you rather than going to the general website on their own. Has that been your experience as well?
Well, I mean, I have seen, not exactly. I have
Okay.
seen personal websites work. I've seen QR codes work. You're kind of getting it sort of a larger sort of issue in direct mail, which is personalization, right?
Yes.
The more, generally speaking, and this is across industries, the more personalization that you can put into a piece of mail, the more likely people are to respond, right? So
Hmm.
if you are, for example, positioning your mail piece not so much as an advertisement, but more as an informational packet, and you're able to include information that kind of mirrors what's whatever the story is for the customer, like their finances, or where they're at with their debt or whatever. If you're able to kind of mirror that back to them, they are much more likely to kind of follow the CTA that you've provided, right? So I have actually found that those QR code and Pearl tactics have actually been successful.
Okay. So then when you are justifying the need for direct mail or the investment in direct mail specifically, what are you citing? Is it, I'm assuming it's not just those QR code scans and personal URL visits.
Mhm.
How do you usually talk about the performance and the impact that direct mail has in the larger organizational scheme?
Speaking specifically with financial services, kind of these high consideration products, they do tend to have less success in the digital domain, even though you may be doing the paid social, you may be doing, you're probably doing the email, you're doing kind of, all of these things in the
Hmm.
digital space. They don't always provide the same ROI that you're going to get from a medium like direct mail. So really that kind of justifies itself.
Okay.
Um, but you do, like, over time, like any industry with virtually any marketing channel, I mean, you have to be aware of fatigue for channels, right? Like,
Hmm.
how are you rotating out your creatives? Like, are you just recycling the same message, or are you saying something new? What are you offering the customer? So I mean, that's the kind of thing that does have to be revamped
Hmm.
quite often. And then you have to kind of think, when you're presenting this to executive leadership, you have to kind of think like, okay, I need to spend this amount of money to do this thing that I want to do. What is the response rate and the conversion rate that I need in order to justify that,
Yep.
right? So then, it kind of becomes a process of, figuring that out with testing and with kind of ongoing campaign management. You mentioned earlier about how expensive generally direct mail is.
Hmm.
It makes it a very, it can be a difficult channel to test in because of the cost, right? So you have to constantly be evaluating, like, okay, what is my approach to the positioning of my product, right? And are
Yes.
there opportunities for me to test that positioning in a less expensive channel before I launch it in direct mail, right? So I think when you're trying to prove that you should be going in a certain direction, you have to be able to prove out that, okay, we know that this messaging is solid based on XYZ that we did in these other channels that were less expensive. And then also kind of talking a little bit about, like, here's what we want to do, and here's what we're projecting the response rate is going to be. And then, in direct mail, as we know, it can take several months for a campaign to vintage. So it's a process of just kind of tracking that and, making, basically seeing, like, what are your winners and losers.
Okay. As you were talking, you popped like 27 questions in my mind. So I apologize if
Ah!
this is not necessarily sequential. Okay. You mentioned a lot of things that are required in order to approach this intentionally. Having other campaigns in market, having a good understanding of your positioning and product offering, having the ability to test and the patience to see the results come in over a period of time. So let's framework this a little bit. Who are the audiences and who are the businesses, and what are the prerequisites for direct mail to be successful? Or maybe we can look at it the other way. If you don't have A, B, and C, this is not for you.
We've talked a little bit about data in this conversation. Clean, verified data is like the number one requirement to be successful in direct mail, right? Like, you have
Mhm.
to know your customer. And this is something that I would say brands mess up more than anything else. right? I mean, for example, I can't tell you how many times I've received a piece of mail advertising a extended warranty for a car that I no longer own. Right.
Hmm.
So, like, and, I know that the data is out there because I traded in the car. Like, it's just a matter of this person sending me this piece of mail, getting a hold of that data and verifying their list against that data. For whatever reason, if it's too expensive or not readily available, they've decided not to do it. And they've just taken the risk that this is going to work. The problem with that, of course, is, you're wasting a piece of
Yeah,
mail on me because I can't get this product that you're advertising to me. And then you're eroding your brand, right? Because
absolutely.
you're not building trust. You're destroying trust because you don't know my story. So I would say clean data is the number one thing that is a concern. If you don't have access to that, then I would not go anywhere near direct mail. You also have to have like a very clear purpose, right? Like you kind of mentioned like audiences. It's important to know like what is the purpose of the mail piece? Like, is this like pure lead generation? Are you trying to retain existing customers? Are you cross-selling a product to a particular group of customers that already exist? Really knowing what the purpose is. And sometimes the data dictates the purpose, right? Because you have to look at what you have, what is in your CRM, what do you
Hmm.
know about these customers? But having a clear purpose so that it's easy to measure, right? Like what success is, like because we have a clear idea that we're putting in this customer's mind about what it is we want them to do. Like I said, personalization is key these days. The more personalization that you can do, the better. The more success I would say that you have a chance of getting.
Hmm.
I know in the financial services world in particular, like you're kind of walking a fine line because, like across the industry, we're all using, for example, credit bureau information, right, on customers
Yep.
as personalization points. That can be creepy if you're not careful. It can be creepy. It can look like you're,
Hmm.
diving into areas of somebody's life that they don't necessarily want you to be in. So you really have to it's all about the positioning and the messaging. Like, how are you, like, does this information look helpful or does it look invasive, right? And you want to try you have to make sure to the best of your ability that it's helpful. And then just attribution is like kind of you kind of been talking about measuring success, and having a good attribution infrastructure is also very necessary, right? Like, I mean, that's a prerequisite for being in direct mail, for being in any channel, really, but
Hmm.
especially in direct mail since it's so expensive, right? Like, what are you asking the customer to do? Are they calling a person? Are they visiting a website? Are they filling out a form? Not only what information are you giving them, but what information are you expecting them to give you, right? Like if you're sending them to a website, are you collecting an email address so that you can retarget them later? That's kind of the key here when we're talking about kind of an integrated campaign is figuring out like what is the information we have in the CRM, what is the information we're trying to collect, how are we tracking things online, and you have to kind of think about all of that when you're thinking about direct mail. How does it operate within your larger marketing ecosystem? And then finally, the kind of the big thing that's always top of my mind is compliance. Particularly when you're working in one of these highly regulated industries, you want to make sure that you are engaging your legal counsel and your compliance partners at every step of the way, so that they have an understanding of who it is you're mailing, what it is you're mailing, how are we maintaining privacy, how are we maintaining fidelity to the regulations that apply. So I mean that's also a top consideration.
You make it sound like so much.
I
Okay.
mean, actually, it's kind of funny because like I actually find the compliance part of it, getting things approved is and chasing people down is never fun, but like figuring out how to do what it is you're trying to do when you can't necessarily do exactly what you want to do is often an interesting channel.
It can be a really good puzzle, especially if you have a really good business partner on the
Yes.
compliance and legal side rather than somebody who's just trying to say no to everything. But you're right.
Exactly.
It can
Somebody,
be
yes,
can be
exactly. You
really
want, you
fun.
want, exactly. You want to try to cultivate a relationship where the legal person feels like they are a marketer partnering with
Yes.
you, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. But that's a deeper topic. I do want to expand a little bit on the fact that data is an absolute requirement. Data means different things to different people. I'm assuming, because that has been my experience, when you say clean data, you mean more than just the right name, the right address,
Right.
and maybe some very basic demographics. When we're talking about clean data, we need to actually understand their tendencies and their behaviors and
Yes.
have whether you have your persona built based on triggers and signals, or you have your personas built based on kind of third party information. You need to have accurate understanding of them as a person
Yeah.
rather than just on a piece of paper who they theoretically are.
Correct. Correct. And you want to check and re-verify your sources at every step, right? And it's not just enough. I mean, it's really not just enough these days to just have a check on the address, right? To use, kind of the postal office systems to make sure that you've got people's right address. Like there are much more sophisticated pieces of information that are going into a mail piece now, especially in healthcare or financial
Mm-hmm.
services, and it's highly sensitive information, and people get angry if you get it wrong. you
And they
know
should. I would be. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So
yeah.
then the other question that I have in terms of prerequisites is frequency. There's a lot of conversations in terms of reach and frequency in marketing overall, but specifically in direct mail, right? When you have your list modeling and your highest propensity styles are the ones that tend to have kind of more frequent outreach. But
Mhm.
let's start with the basics. Can direct mail be successful with a single send?
I've never seen it work that way.
Okay.
I've never seen it work that way. I've only seen it work over time, and multiple touch points, and different. You're kind of trying to maintain the same branding over time, but that doesn't necessarily mean the piece is going to look the same every single time, right? Because you're kind of trying to approach this one particular person in kind of a different way. So no, I don't think like if somebody is new to the direct mail space and they're just thinking about sending one piece of mail, like I don't think that's the way to go. I think it really does need to be a campaign where you're planning multiple touch points over time.
I completely agree. And this is where I would say that's the other prerequisite, or I guess a way to rule out whether direct mail is right for you. If you're willing to wait for a series of relationship building touch points or brand equity building touch points to actually get results, great. But if you're hoping to get ROI on first send, or maybe do it as a one and done campaign, it's not the right path forward.
Right. Right.
Okay.
I mean, I think, and kind of getting to this idea of a VP or somebody who's thinking about doing direct mail for the first time, right? I mean, you want to do everything you can to set yourself up for success out of the gate, right? Like, so I mean, doing things like leveraging the messaging strategy that you've seen success with in digital. Like I said, direct mail is not a great place for testing until you develop a certain facility for it, right? And like a
Mm-hmm.
certain rhythm with it. But you can't necessarily expect your first try at it to be the end all be all, right? Like you have to approach it from a position of, okay, we're going to iterate and improve over time,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And
Um,
then as that VP of marketing, I wouldn't be banking the success of my introducing our first ever direct mail send.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You would have to view it as something you're working in maybe one or two campaigns, and you're gonna try it over a period of time, more than a quarter, because I mean, chances are you're not even going to have results back within one quarter, right? Like, so
Yes.
I would say that you need to give it at least a year or two, and to see whether it's really working.
Understood. Agreed. It is a hard one to enter for somebody that's looking for quick results. Definitely helpful. Okay, let's talk about targeting a little bit. Again, data comes in as the most needed requirement for personalization, but also for targeting, so that if you are reaching out to people, you're not just reaching out to everyone. So if you're maybe messaging people within your own database in terms of a current customer campaign for kind of cross sell or upsell or repurchase, Or if you're doing data modeling to find additional audiences, it's a lot more than, demographic, geographic information. It's been a good 5 years since I've last focused on list building for direct mail. I'm guessing the technology has moved forward quite a bit since then. So, can you kind of talk about blue sky possibilities for somebody who wants to do it right, has the right data? How can building the right list look?
And I think what you're getting at is kind of arriving at that idea of the right message for the right audience, right? And
Yes.
it really just kind of depends on what kind of organization you work in, right? Like, for example, if you're working for a very large bank, and you're selling a particular product, you have to kind of think about like the parameters of that product, right? Like what is the FICO band of the ideal customer? Like are they homeowners? Are they not homeowners? Like who is this persona? And I think, at this point that's sort of where the AI tools and the modeling has really kind of advanced, significantly over the past decade or so, to the point where you really can identify the group of people that is most likely to respond, right? And then that's you kind of treat that as your target base of customers. And then you're kind of testing out these other segments, as you can, to kind of mine for additional possibility.
Absolutely. You brought something up that reminded me that you talked a little bit about what competitors are doing some competitive research. Is there a cost to not to being the only kind of brand in the competitor set not being present in the direct mail channel?
I mean, I think you're leaving leads on the table, definitely, right? I mean, it's something that you should at least consider, particularly if you're
Mhm.
in an industry like financial services or healthcare or something like that. I mean, I think it's something you have to definitely look at. Like I said, I kind of talked earlier about the company that I talked to who
Yep.
wasn't doing it for a long time, and then all of a sudden they started doing it. Because I think, and I don't have like kind of the full picture of what happened there, but I would imagine that they kind of saw that, like, oh, we're not going to meet our goals just by digital alone. We've got to try something new, and this something new happened to be a very old medium.
Was new to them. I understand.
New to them, yes, exactly.
All right. Final question. If you were a VP of marketing and you were tasked with adding direct mail to your 2026 initiatives, where would you start?
Sure. And we've kind of touched on a lot of these points up till now. We talked about the fact that it's a very large upfront investment, that you're making way before you see results. It can take months for campaigns to vintage. So you want to set yourself up for success as best you can. I would say, like I said before, we need to make it sort of a not just a strategy that we're going to do for one quarter. It's going to have to be something over a span of time, at least 1 to 2 years, to kind of test out, like, okay, is this really a channel that's going to work for us?
Mhm.
Where I would start is, doing an audit of your CRM, taking a look at what customer data you currently have, identifying, like, what additional data might we be able to obtain. I would recommend starting with what you have, because that would be customers you already know. And then just thinking of direct mail as an extension of what you're already doing in digital. We've been talking, this whole time about, having that omni-channel touch point for this journey for these customers. That's how I would approach it. I would make it an additional touch point that you're adding to your digital campaigns. Capitalize on the messaging that has worked for you in digital. The nice thing about direct mail is you generally have more real estate on the marketing piece, so you can go a little bit more in depth into that story. But I would align the basic messaging and the look and the feel with what you're doing in these other channels, and then make sure that you know what the purpose is you're trying to achieve, right? Like, I know I have seen some companies who wanted to increase just awareness,
Mhm.
right? Direct mail is not a great awareness strategy, right? Like, I mean, I think
Yes.
direct mail works best when you are focusing more on direct response, right? So think of it in that way. And then, decide like what the objective is that you're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to get new leads? Are you trying to, cross sell something? Are you retaining or reactivating a certain customer? You want to be very clear about that. And then, I would start with piloting one or two campaigns. Very, very important considerations that gets into kind of the nitty gritty. You want to make sure that the look and feel carries from digital over to print. That's something else that brands sometimes get wrong. Things like working with colors, right? Like you're working with RGB and digital, you're working with CIMAC when you get into print. You want to make sure that like your brand is carrying over, the logos look the same, the colors look the same. So I mean, there are like kind of basic considerations for kind of the logistics of executing the campaign that you need to pay attention to. And then I would say, if you don't already have a group of print vendors that you could potentially work with, you need to do some work on some RFPs, and you need to take a look at what is going to be your most cost effective and best option. Different vendors have different approaches. You have to decide, are you going fully in line with your printing? Are you doing pre-printed shells with variable prints? I kind of mentioned earlier, if you're working for a larger business that sends a lot of mail, is there a potential for you to piggyback on somebody else's campaign, observe some cost savings there? The one thing that I will say that some people don't necessarily think about, particularly in industries like financial services, pretty doesn't always win, right? Like when it comes to direct mail pieces, sometimes that plain white envelope with a simple letter on the inside is going to beat anything is sparkly and shiny and you think is amazing looking. So consider that. Consider like what kind of money and effort you're going to be putting into the actual printing of the piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's an industry like retail where potentially you could do something more like a catalog or a postcard or something like that. I think definitely graphic design is you can go a little bit crazy there as opposed to working in a more highly regulated industry where you need to create something that's a little bit more official looking. But that's kind of where I would start in terms of your consideration.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You have
Absolutely.
given a lot of information for people to consider, and was really fun for me to dig into a channel that doesn't get enough attention in my point of view. Any final thoughts you want to add?
I mean, no final thoughts other than the fact that it's a channel that I don't see going away anytime soon, right? And it's one of those channels where people love to sort of sound the death knell for it, and then it comes back, right? So I think as we move into the future, whatever whatever this AI generated future is that we're moving into as marketers, I don't think you can fully discount working with direct mail. I think it always needs to be something that you're considering whether it could work.
Of course. All right. So if someone has questions about direct marketing or direct mail specifically, or looking to make some headway in that space next year, how can they get in touch with you?
You can absolutely get in touch with me via LinkedIn. Michael Refky. Yeah, I'm looking to build my network and make more connections with marketers and marketing enthusiasts, and just people in general from other industries besides financial services. So I would love to have conversations or connections with any of you that may be watching this.
Perfect. And as you can tell, this is always going to be an in-depth and fun conversation. So I could not recommend Michael more for coffee chats and knowledge share on any marketing topic that you might be thinking
Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate that.
of. All right. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks.